Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending where you are in the world, and welcome to today's Plastics Today webinar, AI for Plastics, Key Use Cases for Smarter Engineering and Manufacturing, sponsored by SimForm, powered by Maya HTT, and broadcast by Informa. I'm Michael Krieger. I'll be your moderator today. We have just a few announcements before we begin. First of all, this webinar is designed to be interactive. On the right hand of your screen, you'll find the Navigation Center, which will allow you to learn about our speaker, download resources, contribute to the polling questions, and participate in the Q&A session that's going to take place at the end of the presentation. If you experience any technical difficulties, you can refresh your webinar console, usually by pressing F5, or just type your issue into the Q&A area, and we'll be glad to offer one-on-one assistance. Lastly, before you leave us today, please complete our webinar survey, which will pop up, as your feedback provides us with valuable information on how we can improve future events. And now on to the presentation. Discussing today's topic is Christopher Blake, Director of New Product Development at Maya HTT. To learn more about Christopher, just visit the Info tab on your Navigation Center. Christopher, thanks for joining, and over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for that nice introduction and for attending today's webinar about key use cases for AI in the injection molding industry. I'll start off with just a little bit of background about our company called MyHTT. So we're what you'd call an engineering solutions company. We've been in business for over 40 years and have offices in the United States, in Canada, in the UK, and in France. We really have, I would say, three main business units to our company. First and foremost is our engineering software development. We develop simulation and design software for engineers, primarily in the areas of thermal and fluid analysis. But we also have a services business where we do design and simulation for higher enterprise software deployment and configuration, custom software development for our customers, as well as applied artificial intelligence for our industrial customers, as well as IoT, which is Internet of Things. And then lastly, we also sell a large portfolio of software products through our partnership with Siemens Digital Industries Software. And actually, through our relationship with Siemens, we've sold up to, over 2 million licenses of our own products, of which there are about 35 sold worldwide. I think what really differentiates our company is the fact that we leverage our engineering expertise and our software development skills to really provide a solution that's unique to every one of our customers. So that's a little bit of background about Maya. Why are we sponsoring today's webinar with Plastics Technology? Well, in the past, we've done several thermal analysis and software automation projects for plastic part OEMs and some hot runner companies. And we've also developed a designer-focused mold cooling simulation software, which we call SimForm. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later in how it connects to the theme of today's webinar. So just to level set, often nowadays when we think about artificial intelligence, our mind often goes to the big names out there like ChatGPT or Google Gemini. But AI is more than just generating funny memes or finding out what to do in your vacation. There are very practical use cases in industry where AI can help. So as kind of a definition, artificial intelligence refers to the ability of computer systems to simulate human intelligence processes like learning from data, recognizing patterns, making decisions, and adapting over time. AI doesn't mean the rise of sentient robots or anything like that. That's artificial general intelligence. That's completely different and hopefully the realm of science fiction. AI, from a practical sense, encompasses a large set of mathematical algorithms that use a set of training data to kind of optimize the parameters that are inside of a model so that that model can be used to make predictions and recognize patterns in newly acquired data. It's not black magic, it's really just some very sophisticated math. And in manufacturing, this can be very useful. It can leverage data that is produced during an industrial process to automate decision making, or also it can be used to automate repetitive tasks and perform multitasking. AI isn't necessarily about replacing people. That's always a fear. It's more about freeing us up to do the more human thinking, the more human tasks, and turning the more repetitive tasks into something that can be automated, turning data into more actionable intelligence that we as humans can act on to improve productivity, the quality of our products, and improve our sustainability. There are different categories of AI. Here are just a few of them. Machine learning refers to algorithms that can identify patterns in data for prediction or optimization or for categorization of data. Deep learning is a term that you've probably heard, and this refers to using neural networks or related mathematical models to analyze more complex sets of data, like images or high dimensional sensor signals for things like defect detection or anomaly recognition. The term deep in deep learning refers to the number of layers that there are in a neural network. If you look at the image, and with more layers, it means that the model can capture more and more complex systems or dynamic processes. Reinforcement learning refers to systems that learn to optimally control a process or another system through trial and error feedback. So basically, the model will try and take an action or make a prediction and will then be either rewarded or penalized depending on how good that action is. That will update the parameters of the model so that it becomes a better predictor or action in the next cycle. And then lastly, there's generative AI. These are the models that are able to create new content or simulate new scenarios out of, I'm going to say nothing in quotation marks. These are things like that can simulate or produce new digital twins or new process simulations. And this is actually the category under which ChatGPT falls, because ChatGPT is able to generate new text content, new image content out of all the data that it's been trained on. So with that, we'll just move over to a quick poll. If you go over to your side window and go to the polling tab, I'd like to get a sense from everyone where you are in your AI journey. What brings you to this webinar? Are you at the point where you already have AI models working in production environment? Are you kind of in the throes of a proof of concept to see how AI machine learning could help you? Are you just at the point of evaluating how it could benefit your specific use cases? Or you're just kind of vaguely interested and haven't considered it yet? So, please enter in your responses and we can see where everyone's at in the audience. I'm not sure I can see the live results yet.
I think if you see the poll, just click on the submit your answer, and you'll see all the results pop up.
Okay. I'll submit my own answer, and then I get to see it. There you go. Thanks, Michael. Yeah, so most of you are in the evaluation phase. So it's great that you are here at this webinar to kind of learn how AI could potentially benefit your companies. So the poll will stay there, but I'll keep going with the content, and feel free to add your comments in the chats as well. So just to further emphasize the difference between uh, consumer applications of AI and industrial applications, here's a bit of a comparison table. When you think about consumer AI, it's more referring to, like, personal assistants, recommendation engines, apps on your phone, and they draw their data from large scale compendia of data, like internet scale public data. Like, that's where ChatGPT and Gemini get a lot of their data. And it's really tuned for mass market general, and these models are more generalized because they're going to serve a wider audience. When we talk about industrial and manufacturing AI, it's more focused on value add or efficiency, bottom line type use cases for predictive maintenance, quality inspection, optimization of processes. And the data is usually coming from more closed sources, like the sensor or PLC data on your shop floor, machine logs, IoT sensors or devices, production line data, throughput, or even simulation data. And the models, though they may be based on general foundational models, they're often going to be specialized or tuned specifically for the equipment or processes in a given factory or site. And they're going to focus on safety, reliability, integration with legacy systems. And they are going to be constrained often to work in those closed systems and have to work much faster. So that's kind of the difference between the two um, areas of AI, if you will. Now, where does it fit into the plastic injection molding process? I've kind of mapped out uh, different steps in the injection molding process, including some of the business processes. We'll go through those through the following slides. The ones called out by the darker orange M are steps where our company, MyHCT, has either solutions or relevant examples to kind of emphasize those use cases. So I'll go through them one by one now with an example from each of these business processes. So let's start with the design of plastic parts. You guys are probably well aware that when a plastic part is designed for a given fit, form, or function, it isn't always necessarily manufacturable. Many companies, injection molders or tool manufacturers, they have their own internal DFM, or design for manufacturing processes, that are used to check for common issues like a variable part thickness, undercuts that are going to prevent demolding, features that are going to need special actions, even looking at the cycle time. The software that we developed, SimForm, is one of those tools that you can use to evaluate cycle time. Uh, our company is actually also working with a mold maker in Quebec City to automate their DFM process, thus removing some of the steps or the bottlenecks in the preliminary tooling design phase. So with historical part data for training, you can use AI models to detect features off of the plastic part that are potentially going to complicate the tool and or increase the overall manufacturing process. And then generative algorithms can be used to produce the reports, compile all the data from different analyses, and have those reports be shared with the customer. So AI in this use case or user scenario is meant to remove a lot of the repetitive design for manufacturing steps, and thus free the project engineer for more higher value tasks, like verifying the cost of the job, or collaborating with different stakeholders on the job that's being bid on. Along with designing the plastic parts, an appropriate material must also be selected. And with so many families and grades of plastic resins, not to mention all the additives and the fillers. It can be quite a daunting task, especially for new designers and new engineers in the industry. A lot of expertise is unfortunately slowly leaving the industry, which is a common theme amongst many of the use cases that I'm going to be presenting today. So that knowledge needs to be captured somewhere and shared with younger entrants into the industry. Large language models, or LLMs, again, a term that you probably have heard of. This is the technology behind ChatGPT. These can be trained or augmented with information from data sheets, specs, or best practices, thus helping newer engineers and designers with kind of an interactive virtual expert that they can consult. There's a company, a startup called Plastics.com that actually has a chat bot that has been enhanced to read through and kind of suggest different resins based on the application that the user is bringing forth in that chat interface. And our team is actually having some brainstorming sessions with them to see how process simulation solvers that we work on can be an additional source of data for their LLMs to augment the experience of their users. Likewise, AI models can translate some of the performance requirements of a plastic part into those resin formulations, making that selection easier. If your performance requirements are ill-defined, you could also train a model on all your legacy parts and the materials that were used in order to propose compounds for similar parts that you're going to be bidding on in the next job. Quotations are another common challenge and a good use case for AI. There exist platforms out there and vendor networks like Fictive or Xometry, if you heard of those. These are able to provide quotations quickly based on uploaded CAD models. And these, of course, benefit from access to lots and lots of training data that have come from their previous clients. Internally, however, each toolmaker or each injection molder has specific machinery, specific presses, injection mold machines, their own capabilities and expertise, and familiarity with the families of products that they serve. So a quote is going to be specific to the specific company. Given historical data of previous CAD submissions, dimensions, the bills of material that were used on previous quotes, the quoted rates, and even the win-loss, like how successful prior quotations were done, you can train an AI model like a neural network to produce quotes on new submissions that are coming in. I know it can be challenging to say, I'm just going to take the AI quote and send it out to the customer. But even if the quotations are preliminary and still require a human sign-off or check, this is still accelerating the process, getting a lot of the data together, allowing you to more quickly respond to RFPs with a little bit more confidence because it's based on historical data and more positive outcomes. The idea is to accelerate that process to allow you to win more business and increase the throughput. All right, so that brings us to our next poll, and I'll do it right this time. I'd like to get an idea based on what I've already said, but also what you've been thinking about as you evaluate use cases of AI. Where would you like to see the increase in productivity for your business? Is it the quotations that you're concerned with? Is it more with part or tooling design, like the number of iterations it takes, the number of simulation? Is it your production process that you want to get going faster to set it up? Or are you more concerned about maintenance of your equipment? Where do you think in your business you would like to see an increase in productivity or efficiency? Very interesting. So a lot of people are voting for the part or tooling design. So that kind of upfront, not necessarily at the quotation stage, but in the design process to hopefully result in better outcomes later on when we get to the production process. It's very interesting. But still some people who are interested in optimizing the process parameters as well. Great. All right, I'll keep going. I'm gonna digress ever so slightly for a moment and talk about the importance of cooling in the injection molding process. You guys are probably well aware that the cooling phase of the injection molding cycle is often majorly made up of the cooling stage. Up to 80% of that cycle time can be cooling. And cooling is important because if it's not uniform, this can lead to defects on your plastic part, like sink marks or unanticipated weld lines, or of course, warpage and shrinkage that reduces the, or doesn't meet the tolerances required of the part. Now, alongside that, the industry itself is facing a lot of endemic challenges, being faced by molders and mold makers alike. In order to stay competitive, especially when it comes to competition with offshore suppliers, lead times for design and manufacturing are shortening, and the shortage of skilled labor, like I was mentioning before, is becoming more and more important. So you combine those two, what's the solution? Well, at least from our company, the one that we propose at MyHTT is our tool called SimForm, which is an easy to use yet insightful simulation software of the injection molding process. Our software offers a generative algorithm that allows mold designers and tooling engineers to accelerate their design workflows and avoid lengthy mold trials, and even worse, costly rework of their tooling. So referring to generative design, generative algorithms aren't limited to producing reports or generating images. There also exist capabilities to produce three-dimensional designs. Maybe you've heard of the term topology optimization. That's one of those technologies that you can use to produce those really organic looking structures, like for brackets, that they meet the strength requirements, but also they're minimizing the mass of the part. At Maya, we've developed a similar generative algorithm that takes a 3D plastic part and produces a recommendation of where you need to put the cooling channels in order to minimize the temperature spread on the surface of that part. And this is an aspect or a feature of our mold cooling software called SimForm. So basically the way it works is you provide a plastic part design as CAD. We create an offset surface from that plastic part, which basically represents the safe distance at which you can drill your channels and still maintain the structural integrity of the part. Then we do a prediction of the cooling time for that part. And then we iterate over that offset surface the locations of cooling that are going to minimize the variance of the part temperatures. And we use an adjoint optimization algorithm to do that. Then we extract all the cooling regions and then prioritize them based on the amount of heat each region is rejecting out of the part and present that back to the user. Our users then can use these results to either design a 3D printed conformal cooling insert, or they can use it as a guide for where they're going to put conventional gun drill channels, where those need to be located. Either way, it's helping the designer or tooling engineer get an initial cooling layout up front so that they can kind of co-design the location of ejector pins and actions and sliders and things like that. So SimForm is our mold simulation tool. It's basically like what we like to say is mold simulation that everyone can use. It's meant to be easy to use, and also used earlier in the design phase, in the preliminary design phase as well, because in less than 15 minutes, you can evaluate the temperatures on your plastic part and on your mold as well as they evolve in time to help inform your choice of where channels need to be placed, as well as get an estimate of the cooling time for the part, which is, as we know, a driver of cycle time. This is meant to avoid over designs, redesigns, and also help you make the financial justification for like more higher conductivity inserts or even 3D printed conformal cooling. And kind of what differentiates us is the fact that we're an entirely cloud native solution. So we have access to high compute resources in the cloud. We're focused on the design and manufacturing stage. And of course, we have those generative algorithms that are meant to help with the overall design process. But ultimately, there's another example of a generative use case that helps accelerate a step in the plastic injection molding process. So we'll get back to the remaining use cases of the talk. So we'll mention material characterization. Characterization of resins is a challenge in and of itself, often requiring the use of specialized testing facilities, using differential scanning, colorimetry, dynamic mechanical analysis, testing of heat deflection temperatures, and other things. There's an increasing interest in sustainability and the circular economy. So recycled plastics are becoming more and more commonplace. OEMs are requesting it because end customers are requesting it. But the origin and the processing of these source materials leads to variability in the resulting material properties from batch to batch. This is why quantifying the uncertainty in material models has started to generate more interest. There was a talk I attended late last year. I took a screen grab from the YouTube video from it. It's in the top right. Don't worry that it's in French, but basically what was observed as the more times that a part made out of PLA was used recycled content, like the more times the PLA was recycled, the more the material characteristics that were important for the application degraded. So if one has like a reliable mathematical model of a material, you could perform some uncertainty quantification. Like there are algorithms that can be used to characterize the sensitivity of the material properties to changing inputs, like the proportion of one material to another or the amount of filler or whatever. But machine learning models can be used to accelerate that sensitivity analysis as well. Or what they can be done, they can be trained on experimental data from different lots, from different batches. And then the AI model can actually be used as the material model themselves. And there are companies that are starting to do this. If we move now over to the actual or to the production process of the tooling, we can see how AI can fit in. So this is a use case from our company. I can't mention the customer, but it's one that we worked on for automating cost estimation of CNC machine parts. Essentially, the customer wanted to develop and offer a self-serve portal for the part families that they were manufacturing, which in this case were jigs and fixtures. But you need to realize that a jig and fixture is custom to every end client because it needs to fit around the part that's being assembled on the assembly line. So estimating the machining cost was always a manual process involving some toolpath definition. To accelerate this process, we work with the customer to combine the existing feature detection capabilities in their CAM software with an AI model to automatically generate tooling paths and provide a cost estimate. And training was done on their prior parts and quotes. So you can kind of imagine a similar or parallel use case if we were talking about injection molded inserts, which have a lot of common features like gun drills and um, screw holes and bushing holes and things like that, but also have the lofted surfaces that are in contact with the plastic part. When it comes to the actual process of injection molding, people on this webinar are no doubt familiar with simulation tools like MoldFlow, MoldX, CAD Maya HTT also offers a cloud-native fill pack simulation package through one of our partners. The audience is also uh, probably aware that there's often a disconnect between what is simulated on the computer and what actually occurs on the production floor. It's not uncommon for mold trials to be done exclusively to iterate and define the injection molding process without considering the simulation. Or sometimes simulations are too time consuming to do a proper optimization, or there's concern that they don't entirely reflect the reality that is happening on the production line floor. This is where AI and ML can come into play as well. Firstly, there are tools to actually change the parameters and help match a simulation model to reference test data in order to produce what we would call a calibrated digital twin of the production process. Our company actually developed some correlation tools for thermal and structural simulation models. Secondly, if you have even sparse samples of previous mold trial data or even detailed simulation results, these can be transformed into surrogate models. There are different machine learning techniques that can be used, things called like subspace prediction techniques or recurrent neural networks. The advantages of surrogates are that once they're trained, they're extremely fast and can be used to explore the parameter space of the production process quicker to help optimize the production process. Essentially, what you're doing once you have a surrogate is performing like hundreds of virtual mold trials with ever actually going down to the machine. Once the injection molding process is defined and in production, pardon me, AI can actually help to control that process. But in order to do that, you need data to be collected. There are many providers in this space. For example, you can get flow monitors that measure water flow rates, pressures, temperatures, temperature rises in the cooling lines. There are thermocouples that can measure mold temperatures. There are industrial PCs that can track the throughput of a machine and monitor the cycle time. There are even in-cavity sensors that can measure the temperature as well as the pressure directly in the melt, and in some cases even the degree of cure. Once collected, this data can be fed into AI models that are going to predict things like the part quality or the melt viscosity. The whole idea is that with a feedback loop, this data can be used to dynamically control process parameters like cooling time, like timing of when heating elements or cooling elements in the mold turn on or off. The objective here is to move away from a single conservative definition of the injection molding process to more of a dynamic one that adjusts to minimize the cycle time with each shot and maximize the product quality of each shot. AI is equally useful in quality control to detect issues and defects in parts that have already been produced that are just coming off the line. The models, they do this, or the model pipelines, I should say, they do this by like segmenting the images into different parts, matching segments to pre-trained images of example defects or successful parts, and then detecting features that or quality defects on the newly acquired image of the part. An example I listened to at the Antec conference last year, it was presented by a university, and they used a model called Dino V2. I think it's developed by Facebook to process images of plastic coupons and extract pertinent features and defects from those images, and then classify those defects so that warnings can um, uh, be brought back to the user. This type of pipeline has the potential to automate inspection and lower the amount of waste and scrap by detecting faulty parts earlier. You can imagine, instead of waiting for a regularly scheduled audit or checking or quality control of a batch of parts, if every part is imaged and categorized as faulty or not faulty, you can make more proactive measures to intervene in the injection molding process. Maya has worked on a similar use case, albeit it's for welding processes instead of injection molding, but it kind of gives you an idea. In this project that we did with Eagle Hydraulics, we applied an AI model called a vision transformer to images of welded assemblies, and we extracted features of the weld location to classify them as either good or bad. And this is mainly to increase the speed and quality of inspection and avoid, costly after-sales recalls. All right, last poll question, just to see if everyone's awake. I want to know who is currently collecting data from their production processes. I kind of want to get a sense for how digitally mature the audience is. So who among you is collecting telemetry data from their production machines and storing it centrally? Do you have access to data but not currently using it or storing it? Or maybe you haven't yet considered measuring data from sensors and are interested in learning how to do that. I have to answer. We don't really have machines per se, but I'll say top answer because we've worked with a number of companies. Interesting. It's kind of similar across everybody. So some of you are digitally mature and have access to that data. Very good. So you're on your way through your digital journey already. So I'll leave the poll going for a little bit longer because the next slides kind of have to do with this poll. We talked about the sensor and telemetry data from the injection mold machine to evaluate part quality, but we can also talk about AI to assess the state of the actual machinery itself. So this is a dashboard UI from a tool that we've developed at our company that takes a set of sensor values at different time intervals and determines whether that set is potentially anomalous, given the history of normal operating conditions for the equipment. It uses a machine learning technique in high dimensions. And really the use case here is preventative maintenance before there's a severe failure on the production line. You can imagine that an injection mold machine with post-mold robotic steps, these have a lot of moving parts. And if there's starting to be a drift in product quality or pressure, or the fill rate is deviating, or maybe there's some vibration levels in the machinery, this can indicate a need for maintenance. And if that drift is detected early, then proactive maintenance can be performed without a lengthy downtime on the production line. So here's an example use case that we worked on from the pulp and paper industry, where we tracked sensor readings in a pump, a transformer, and a rolling machine amongst 40 other assets. And we found several anomalies in the data that led to some proactive interventions and an increase in the mean time between significant repair events. This use case is also very interesting because it was implemented using a cloud IoT infrastructure called Insights Hub by Siemens. Not all solutions necessarily have to be in the cloud, of course. There are very capable industrial PCs that will operate within your private network and can operate right next to equipment and run AI models for predictive maintenance. Now, if we talk about the place of AI in your business processes, I can say that certainly our company, we're actively exploring and using how generative AI chatbots can accelerate our tasks, like, typical writing emails, drafting reports and proposals. We're even using it to do preliminary market research for the evaluation of new product ideas, kind of in my area of the company. In the plastics industry, generative AI can be used to help compensate for that widening skills gap that I was talking about before. PlasticsToday, for example, is another chatbot trained on a library of textbook and training resources in plastics. I met these guys at the Antec conference as well. And as Gen AI becomes more and more sophisticated, we're going to see examples of chatbots that can start to manipulate, CAD programs to lower the learning curve of new users and start to remove monotonous, repetitive tasks. AI agents, if you don't know, are models that have been trained to do certain tasks using tools that are available within your business ecosystem, like ticketing systems, CAD models, CAD software, PLM systems, ERP systems. And when they work together, they can automate more complex workflows. The whole point of this is to accelerate those non-value add tasks to free us up to do the more challenging tasks. This is kind of an interesting example. It's a mock-up of an integrated chatbot inside of the NX CAD platform that we worked on. And you can see how natural language can be a convenient resource when you're working with a complex software like a CAD system. You wouldn't use it to just automate creation of one chamfer or one fillet in your CAD system, like is shown on the screen. Where it really brings the value is when you need to chamfer 100 edges of a certain type, like that are all vertical or all horizontal. That really removes repetitive clicking in the software. And then another thing that we worked on is an on-premise agent that can be used for troubleshooting and maintenance of equipment. Very often the equipment that we have on the production floor has lots of documentation and troubleshooting guides in PDF or text format. And for a technician to come upon a machine and need to troubleshoot some complex issue, it can take a lot of time to peruse through all that documentation to find the resolution. A chatbot that we've worked on and have been deploying at different customers actually ingests all that PDF information and stores it in what's called a vector database, basically a numerical representation of all the content in those PDFs. Then when you put a large language model on top of it, you can interact using natural language, ask questions, and then your query or prompt is compared to that database of content within the PDF compendia, and similar areas of the documentation are fed back, and then the LLM produces back to you a textual response that kind of answers as if it was answering the question you posed. So this can really help maintenance workers and technicians. And the interesting thing is this can be built into a um, private network. It's entirely off premise. It leverages hardware that you can access or purchase for your own network, leaving all this data secure within your premises. So that's another example of how generative AI LLMs can be used to accelerate um, these business processes. And I'd be remiss not to mention that perhaps sometime in the distant future, all we'll need to do is chat with some bot that will, build the tooling for us. It's kind of seems far-fetched, but to be honest, there are companies that are starting to look at this level of generative AI. Um, Met a few of those at trade shows in the past. So it's interesting how sophisticated these technologies can become. So kind of bringing it back to square one, the most important thing to remember about AI use cases is the use case itself. There needs to be something that is a challenge within your business where AI can actually bring value. And this uh, speaks to the digital journey or the digital maturity that you've developed as an organization. You're not just going to implement an AI system for the sake of it. First of all, you need to know, okay, what data do I actually have access to? What sensors do I have? How clean is my data? And what, for the use case that I've chosen to tackle, what data do I need to address that? Once I've chosen how I'm going to acquire that data, then just start to, consume it, descriptively understand what is contained within data, go back and diagnose previous events. This is the advanced analytics stage. Once you have an understanding of the history of your data, then you can start to do more proactive things using machine learning, using AI to say what will happen in the future if I have this data coming in, or how can I control it? There is a progression in your uh, AI digital journey. And this is something that Maya, we work on with our customers. So we can obviously or always help out folks on the line with that. So we're approaching the top of the hour. Just want to emphasize the key takeaways. Again, there are a lot of AI use cases that I've gone through, and they touch the different stages of the plastic injection molding business process, from design to uh, process parameter definition to production to maintenance. Remember, despite the sophistication of these algorithms, AI is meant to accompany and augment, not replace. It's meant to remove those non-value add, tedious tasks so that it frees us up to do the more um, business, engineering, design type tasks. And always root your AI ambitions in the value that it's going to bring to your company. So develop that business case and ensure that you have the right data at your fingertips to actually help build up those systems. So that's it. In terms of next steps, you can contact me for more insights. We have some info lines for the SimForm application that I was talking about before, as well as for our company in general. You can scan the QR code to reach our contact form directly, and we'd be happy to do, a 30-minute free consultation to explore how fast and easy simulation can help with your design workflows, or to kind of explore your needs for AI in your digital journey. And with that, I'll turn it back to Michael to start going through uh, the QAs. And
Thanks
oh
very
yeah,
much,
we got a whole
Christopher.
bunch of them.
We
Great.
do. I think that was a great presentation. And now on to our Q&A. To participate, just click the Q&A icon on your navigating center and type your question into the text box before clicking send. And if we don't have time to answer all of these questions, we'll be sure to share them with Christopher, who can get back to you offline. So let me get started. Our first question comes from Brian, who asks, does the software actually generate or modify CAD files for both parts and tools? Or does it just make suggestions that still need to be implemented in SolidWorks or Pro E? If it generates files, can it generate them from scratch or only edit existing models?
Okay, so I think you're referring to the software that I was talking about that we worked on. Yeah. So uh, what it's doing is it's generating reference CAD geometry that you would then, as you say, bring into like SolidWorks or Pro E. Um, you, it's not generating the cooling channels like in their final design form because there are certain design standards that need to be followed by
Mm-hmm.
the end user. So that's what we do. We are generating them from scratch, and they can be imported as real CAD geometry into your CAD system, or you can even use. There's some lightweight CAD tools within SimForm to allow you to try out different cooling layouts directly within the software before you go and do the detailed design in CAD. Hopefully that answers the question.
Okay, great. Yeah, and Brian, if you need a clarification, let us know. Louisa wants to know, how do you ensure the security? Oh, I'm sorry, that's from Christopher. From Louisa. Yes. How do you ensure the security of production or simulation data? How do you keep it safe?
I think that's referring also to the other question from Louisa. Are the data made
Made
accessible to
accessible to
everyone? Like,
everyone.
it's all referring to
Yes.
the like what's how safe of is it when data is in the cloud or not? Because I saw a few questions like that. You know, AI systems don't necessarily have to be in the cloud. A lot of them are, especially those kind of business process ones like ChatGPT. Like we use ChatGPT Enterprise, but there is security around it. But when it comes to industrial data, very often users want to keep that within their networks. And that's what I was saying. There's like a lot of AI models have become more and more streamlined to run on industrial PCs and edge devices so that a lot of the inference can be done directly within the customer's environment. Training is actually the thing that is computationally intensive often, and that may need to be done offline or in a secure cloud using test data. But if it's actually inferring off of production data on the line, that often can be done directly within the network. And a lot of the projects, at least we've done at Maya, have to take that into account. Some companies worry about their IP. There's also security concerns. So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks for that. This question comes from Jimmy, who asks, do your AI and simulation tools apply only to injection molding or also to blown film extrusion, cast extrusion, and thermoforming?
Okay, so the software that we've developed, SimForm, is applicable to injection molding, compression molding, and we have some use cases that we're working on right now for thermoforming as well. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Charles wants to know, um, how what technology allows you to run cooling simulations in SimForm so efficiently?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, it's surprising that we can run simulations fast like that. Actually, the solver behind the scenes is running on, if you know what, GPUs, graphical processing units.
Mm-hmm.
These are the computer chips that are very fast. They're used to render graphics on screen in video games, but they're also very effective at simulation. You can really accelerate simulation algorithms. And incidentally, GPUs are also used for training AI models. That's why um, they're being very successful. Those companies are being very successful right now. So yeah, we're leveraging a very fast meshing technique, which is called voxelization, and
Mm-hmm.
accelerated compute on GPU. Yeah.
Okay. We don't have time for a whole lot of more questions. Here's one from Thomas, who asks, What AI categories and applications would be most helpful for undergraduate engineering students to learn?
What categories of AI models? Is that what it was?
What AI categories and applications would be most helpful for undergrads to learn?
That's a good question. Um, I mean, I myself have a basic training in AI, so I started out from the very beginning, understanding, simple models like support vector machines and neural networks, just to get an understanding of the math behind them. But I think now, if you want to make a career of being like a data scientist or a AI engineer, um, you'd want to, take the necessary math courses and learn about uh, deep learning and convolutional networks and even the transformers that go into these more sophisticated models now. But you don't have to necessarily have a mathematical full understanding of them. What you need to know is how they can be used and the constraints on how these models can be used. Even with that knowledge and a little bit of engineering judgment, you can still use these models effectively. I don't know if that answers the question, but I think um, yeah,
Okay.
depends on how deep you want to go into it.
Thanks so much. Greatly appreciate that. And that's all the time we have for questions today. Thanks. We appreciate your time and expertise on today's topic.
Oh,
And
great.
thank
Okay.
And thanks to our sponsor, SimForm, powered by Maya HTT, as well as to everyone in the audience. We appreciate your attention and participation. And within the next 24 hours, you'll receive a personalized follow up email with details and a link to today's presentation on demand. Feel free to invite your colleagues or peers who may not have been able to join us today for the live event. On behalf of our guest, Christopher Blake, I'm Michael Krieger. Thank you and have a great day.